I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, in the past, we've done two different videos on precision rifle cleaning. We did one on semi-automatic rifles and one on bolt-action rifles. If you've got detailed questions on how to clean your precision rifle, make sure you check those videos. We'll leave them in the description section below. Just throw up some links so you guys can click over and check out those. Now, since we published those two videos, we received several other questions about rifle cleaning and cleaning gear. So we're going to try to cover what the bare minimum for cleaning gear is and some options that you have on different cleaning gear. Now, if you have a question on how often to clean your rifle or how to go about it, please make sure you watch those other videos first before sending us a question, because we did go into great detail in both of those videos. But one of the questions that we keep getting is, what should I buy? What do I need to clean my rifle? Should I buy one of the kits? What parts do I need? Well, the first thing is, every time I fire a rifle and bring it back from the range or bring it back from the field, I wipe down the rifle and wipe down the inside of the receiver. The bare minimum tools for after firing care is going to be a rag and a GP brush. Now, the rag that I've got right here is nothing special. This is just an old cotton rag. The best thing for this is if you have an old t-shirt where the neck's stretched out or you're starting to get holes in it or it's gotten stained, wash it, cut it up. They make absolutely wonderful rags. This actually happens to be a part of a jersey cotton sheet that got some holes in it, and I got quite a bit of mileage out of that sheet because I think I've got probably 10 different cleaning rags that we cut up out of that one sheet. You can get a lot of cleaning rags out of a full-size sheet. Now, if they're polyester or nylon sheets or something like that, they're probably not going to work all that well because they won't really absorb oil or carbon really well. Cotton is the best bet for that kind of stuff. Now, for the brush that I have here is just an old toothbrush. That's going to be about your cheapest GP brush that you can possibly find. Take an old toothbrush, make sure you clean it out. You don't want any abrasive toothpaste left in it or any gel or any food particles or any of that nature. So make sure you clean it out really well. Maybe spray it down with some brake cleaner to get any chemicals out of it and make sure that it's dry. And it works really, really well. Now, if you want to spend a little bit of extra money, they do make purpose-built GP brushes. This is a government issue style GP brush, and it has a nice little narrow brush on one end of it, and then it's got a larger toothbrush style brush on the other end of it. And the narrow end is really nice for getting into bolt carriers, getting into really small nooks and crannies, and then the larger area fits into bolt raceways really nicely and covers a lot of ground quickly. They're fairly cheap, so I suggest you pick one up. There are several different manufacturers of them, so grab one, grab a couple. You get quite a bit of mileage out of them. They last for quite some time if you're not really crushing down on it when you're scrubbing. A brush and a cotton rag is really the bare minimum you need to clean out the receiver and clean the exterior of your rifle. Now, when it comes time to clean the bore of your rifle, really your primary tool that you're going to need is a good bore cleaning rod. I prefer one-piece rods because there are no nooks and crannies along them. There are no joints to either gather debris or catch on the rifling of your barrel when you push it through. The one I have here is a Dewy Cleaning Rod, and I've really been a fan of the Dewey rods. They're very well built. They're fairly heavy duty. They have this nice large red plastic handle here, so they're easy to get a hold of. And as you can see, the handle spins very freely, and that's because the handle is actually on a ball bearing. And the advantage of that is when you have a tight-fitting patch or brush on the end of this rod and you push it through the barrel, the end of the rod is going to rotate and follow the rifling. The ball bearing allows the rod to rotate freely as you push it through. If you don't have that ball bearing in there, then you have to make sure that you allow the handle to rotate as the rod goes through. Otherwise, you run the risk of either spinning the rod and unscrewing the jag or brush off the end of it, or the brush or patch will just skip across the rifling instead of really getting down into those grooves and cleaning out the bore. So the ball bearing feature is really nice. You don't really need ball bearings, but you need to make sure that that handle spins free from the rod. The Dewey rods are just really high quality materials. Now, I don't recall if I covered this on our actual cleaning videos, but you need to make sure that your rod is properly sized for the bore of your rifle. You don't want to clean a 30 caliber bore with a 22 caliber rod, because that 22 caliber rod is going to have a lot more tendency to flex. When you push a tight fitting patch or tight fitting brush through that bore, it will cause the rod to bow to one side or the other and push the edge of that rod or the side of that rod against your rifling as you go through. This is not a good condition to be in. You want the rod to exert as little force against the side of that rifling as possible. So using a 27 to 30 caliber rod in a 30 caliber bore works very well. Now obviously when you read that it's a 27 to 30 caliber rod, that means it's designed for 27 to 30 caliber bores, so the rod is already a little bit undersized. It's designed for those bores, so it will give you the minimum amount of flex for those bores. Another reason I like the Dewey rods is because they offer them in several different diameters and several different lengths. Now, since my rods don't generally go to the field with me, they usually stay at the bench. I prefer longer cleaning rods because they give me options to clean a lot more rifles with the same rod. If I have a short rod and then I have a 26-inch barrel, I can't really clean that 26-inch barrel with the short rod. If I have a 40-inch rod and a 20-inch barrel, it's not going to be a problem. You can always clean a shorter barrel with a longer rod. In fact, that's generally preferred. We'll talk about how you figure out the size of your rod here shortly. Now, the rod that I'm holding in front of me is a coated rod. It's got this black plastic coating on it. The purpose of that is the coating on the rod is softer than the bore of your rifle. So if the rod drags across the bore steel, then it's going to cause damage to the coating and not the barrel. These rods are a whole lot cheaper than a premium rifle barrel blank. So even a blank without having it installed is more valuable to you than your cleaning rod. The rods are sacrificial. If they get torn up, you throw them away and you buy a new rod. There are guys that don't like coated rods. They say because the coating is soft, then you can embed debris, material, metal flakes, what have you, in the rod, and then you're dragging that through the bore. Well, for guys that don't like the coated rods, Dewey also makes a one-piece stainless rod. They make them again in several different diameters and lengths so you can get the proper one for your rifle. The stainless rods, the proponents of the stainless rods say since they're a harder material, they're less likely to have grit embedded into the rod and less likely to carry that in the bore. Now, the drawback to that, of course, is you're talking about stainless steel, and you're pushing stainless steel through generally a stainless or a chrome moly rifle barrel. So since your rod is a whole lot harder material, there is the possibility to damage the bore with the rod. Now we're talking about a smooth one-piece stainless rod, so there really isn't a lot to grab or a lot to scratch. I would suggest that if you use stainless rods, make sure before you use it anytime, you run your fingers down the length of the rod and feel for any burrs or any nicks or anything that could cause problems. If you find one, then it may be time to either dispose of the rod or polish out that burr so you don't have a problem. Now, I prefer coated rods over one-piece stainless rods, but either will work. My big thing about it is the outside of the stainless rod is harder, it is more abrasive than the coated rod. If you want to prove that to yourself, then take a bullet that has a copper jacket on it. Now we know the copper jacket on these bullets is considerably softer than ordnance steel that is in a rifle barrel or rifle receiver. So understand this isn't a scientific test, this is just a demonstrative test. You can take this copper bullet and run your cleaning rod down the jacket of the bullet, and then take a look, and you'll actually have marks on the outside of the jacket. It will actually wear a little bit of that copper jacket away when you ran the cleaning rod down it. Now, if you do the exact same thing with a coated cleaning rod, and you can run it down it, then you have absolutely no marks on the jacket of the bullet. In fact, I don't have any marks at all, not even polished marks, just from running it down there with the weight of the rod. So that indicates to me that the coated rod is less abrasive. However, if you use the proper methods of cleaning your rifle, then either rod will work very well. You just want to stay away from segmented rods. The old GI style steel rods that you screw together, those are bad juju. Those rods will bend. I've never seen a set of those that are perfectly straight, and I have yet to see a set that when you screw them together doesn't leave any edges sticking out anywhere to cause damage to your rifle. So unless it is absolutely a life or death situation, do not put a segmented steel uncoated rod down your bore. Now, there are segmented coated rods out there, and there are segmented brass rods out there that are okay for field cleaning, but I still prefer a one-piece rod. My preference is for coated. However, as you can see, I do have a stainless rod here. This stainless rod will get use. This will be my primary cleaning rod on my 243, so it's not a big deal one way or the other. Now, in order to prevent your rod from damaging the chamber end of your barrel, you need to use a proper rod guide. The guide that I have here is a Dewey rod guide, and what it does is it has an O-ringed end that fits tightly into the chamber of your rifle. It has an aluminum collar on it that fits snugly into the receiver, and that has this little brass stem here that locks into the bolt recess to hold the guide rod or rod guide into the receiver while you're working with it. It also has a little port back here on the back that allows you to put solvent into your patches if you wish, while holding them tightly about either your jag or your piercing jag as you run it through. Now, how to use this is you just loosen up this little collar on the back and slide it back. You're going to take the O-ring end of the rod guide and slide it into your receiver and push it into your chamber. And make sure you push it in there snug so that fat O-ring seals up the back of your chamber. Then slide your aluminum collar forward until you get into the bolt recess and let that little brass handle drop down. Pull it to the rear, turn it, and it'll tighten itself down against the rod guide. And now it's snugly fit into your receiver. Now, in addition to helping to line up the rod as it goes through the rifle and prevent the rod from dragging on the lead, it also prevents solvent from running back into your receiver. And if you have a fiberglass stock rifle or a rifle that uses some kind of fiberglass bedding, it helps keep bore solvents from getting back into that stock and harming the bedding. Different bore solvents can actually soften up epoxy bedding and over time destroy it. Also, if you have a wood stock, you want to make sure you don't get that solvent back and start seeping into the fibers of the wood. It can cause swelling and all kinds of other nasty problems. So the guide helps seal up the chamber and prevent those issues. It allows you to get the patch positioned on your rod and run through without it falling off into the mag well or unraveling in the chamber, and get you a good run going into the barrel. That is the main purpose of the rod guide. Now, once you have it set up, if you only have one rifle that you're using, you can leave it set up like that. Just flip it up like you would your bolt and pull it back out of the receiver. And now it's ready to go for the next time. The next time, you just slide it in just like you would your bolt. Make sure it's centered up, push it into the chamber, lock it down, and you're good to go. I have a bunch of different 308 class rifles, so I like this rod guide because it's universal. I can loosen it up and I can slide this collar to wherever it needs to be. So for different rifles, if I want to go to a Remington 700, I can still use this same guide for a 700. I could use it for just about any bolt action out there as long as this collar will fit into the receiver. Now the end of it is designed for 308 class cartridges, so it'll work for 30-06, 308, 243, 6.5 Creedmoor, etc. as long as the body is the same diameter as a 308. If I wanted to use it on, say, a 223, it's not going to work. I would have to get the 223 version for it to work in a 223 bolt-action rifle. This will work in a semi-automatic rifle such as an AR-10 because there is enough length on it. However, the collar is not properly sized for the AR-10. Dewey does make an AR-10 specific guide for those rifles. Now, another guide that I have used quite a bit is the Lucas bore guide. It's a very nice piece of work. It has a separate piece that slides into the end that fits snugly around your cleaning rod to help keep the cleaning rod perfectly centered through the guide. Now, the disadvantage of the Lucas guides is because that end fits tightly around the cleaning rod. If you go from a 30 caliber rod and then you go to clean a 243, that rod doesn't fit tightly in there anymore and it has some room to move around. It's not a big problem, but it kind of negates the advantages of that rod. So for the Lucas rods, they really need to be caliber and rifle specific. They also fit snugly inside the receiver of the rifle. So if you have a rifle with a different size bore in the receiver, the Lucas rods may not work. They are a good product, they're reasonably priced though, and we'll leave a link to them in the description section below. As I said though, if you have several different rifles, I prefer the Dewey because it's adjustable for several different rifles. If you have just one and you want a guide custom made for that single rifle, then the Lucas is the way to go. Now on the end of the rod, and we covered this in our cleaning videos, I prefer to use a Parker Hale Jag. The Parker Hale Jags are designed to wrap patches around them instead of like a piercing jag where you shove the jag through the patch. On the Parker Hale Jags, it gives you more surface area against the side of the rifling, which is what you want when you're pushing a patch through. I just find them a little bit easier to use just to roll that patch around it and run it in than with the piercing jags. However, using a piercing jag with a rod guide is extremely easy because you just hold the patch in front of the guide and run the piercing jag through it and you're good to go. So it's really a personal preference. However, stay away from the loop type patch holders. Loop type patch holders are not really a good idea because the sides of the loop can contact the sides of the rifling if you're not careful. They're not a deal breaker, but I prefer either the Parker Hale or the regular piercing type jag. You'll also need a bore brush. Now the bore brush that I have here is a Dewey No Harm Nylon bore brush. And all it is nylon brushes with a loop at the end instead of many of the bore brushes you see out there are just cut off at the end. So the loop is less likely to actually drag down the bore and it's less likely to harm the bore of your rifle. Again, it's not a deal breaker. I don't know that I've ever had a brush that was so badly deformed that the tip of it would rub, but it's something to bear in mind. So the debate rages on about bronze or nylon for your brushes. I don't really care. I use both. The thing that you want to think about bronze brushes is that if you're using them with copper solvent, then the copper solvent likes to try to suck the copper out of the brush as well. And it may give you false copper signs when you're running those white patches through. You may continue to see blue thinking you've got copper fouling in the bore, when really it's just your brush leaving that fouling indicator behind. With nylon brushes, you don't have to worry about that because the nylon is not going to turn your copper solvent blue. So that's something to bear in mind. Again, I use both of them. Just keep it in mind when you're using them. The key thing is to use the proper sized brush for your bore, and do not, under any circumstances, reverse that brush while it's in the bore. You want to make sure you run the brush all the way out of the muzzle end, and you either remove the brush or once it is completely exited, pull it back gently so that the brush can center itself on the crown and then back through. You don't ever want to just jam it out the end and yank it back through, because if that rod jumps out far enough, and if you have a burr or something on the edge of your Jag, then when you yank it back through, it can catch the edge of the crown and put a ding on the crown. The crown is critically important to the accuracy of your rifle. It's the last thing the bullet touches as it goes down range. So if you put a ding on it, you can cause some accuracy issues later on. It's not a big deal to pull the brush back through the bore of your rifle if you do so slowly, allowing the bristles on the brush to center it back into the bore as you come back through. Now, you don't want to change directions within the bore. You don't want to push the brush halfway down and then pull it back, because those bristles, as you're pushing it through, they want to lean back towards the breech of the rifle. So as you're pushing it through, the friction pushes those bristles back. When you go to pull it back, those bristles don't want to bend backwards. They have a lot of force against the side, and if you're using a bronze brush, what you'll actually see is you'll kink the bristles and you can break the bristles off. With a nylon brush, you get a little bit more flexibility. It'll probably just flex the bristles and flip them back the other direction, but it's going to damage your brush. It has the possibility to damage your bore. It applies a lot of force to the inside of that rifling, so it's just really not a good habit. Run the brush all the way out, either remove it, or once you've cleared the crown, gently pull it back through. This is another reason why you want your rod properly sized for the bore of the rifle. Now, to properly size your cleaning rod, if you're using a bore guide, you want to go ahead and insert that bore guide into your rifle. Go ahead and get this locked back in. Go ahead and insert that bore guide into your rifle, and then what you need to do is measure from the end of the bore guide to the muzzle of your rifle. That measurement is going to be the bare minimum that you're going to need. I always suggest adding a couple of inches to that and then going to the next size larger rod to ensure that when you run that rod through, that no matter what attachment you're using, either Jag or brush, etc., that end will clear the muzzle before your handle bottoms out on your rod. Now, a longer rod will also give you benefits because you can keep that handle clear of the buttstock and you won't be running into the buttstock. Just some little tips, and again, that's why I like to have nice long rods for cleaning at home versus a more compact rod that's more portable. Plus, cleaning rods are cheap. There's nothing to say you can't have different rods for different circumstances. That is how you make sure that you get the most out of your cleaning rods. Make sure your cleaning rod is long enough to do the job, long enough to do the job over all the rifles that you have, and make sure it's properly sized for the bore of your rifle. Don't use too small a rod and too large of a bore because you can get some bending there. That's really all we have for basic cleaning gear. As I said, if you had not watched our cleaning videos, our precision bolt action, our precision semi-automatic rifle cleaning videos, please make sure you go watch those. One final little tip for those of you guys that are reloaders, or if you know reloaders, Sierra bullets come in these really nice plastic boxes. These boxes are perfectly sized for keeping Jags, brushes, or adapters in them. So see if you can beg, borrow, or steal one off of your reloading friends. I've used Sierra bullets for quite some time, so I have piles and piles of these things running around. They're just great little deals to store small things in. If you use Dewey rods, a lot of times you'll have little adapters, and those little adapters, they'll get lost if you're not careful, if you're constantly switching around to different size Jags, different size brushes. So having a nice bright green box is a really great place to keep them. Keeps them from getting lost. That's all we have for this week's episode. If you have any questions on anything that we've discussed, questions in general, or suggestions for future topics, please leave them in the comment section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you've liked this episode, please click that thumbs up button. If you dislike the episode, please leave a comment and let us know why. Constructive criticism allows us to bring you a better product. If you're a subscriber, thank you very much. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. We won't send you a junk mail, but YouTube will let you know when we release new videos. So, please hit that subscription button. Until next week, get out and shoot!